There we go.
Good evening, everybody. I am Ravi Shankar. Welcome you all to the Tamil Heritage Trust 138th monthly talk. The Tamil Heritage Trust was started in 2009. The activities first started with the monthly talks, and then later on, in fact, we started in fact organizing a site seminar, and later we started organizing the annual thematic conference called Poetic Kacheri. And we are proud to have Dr. Sharada talking to us on the women and Bhakti poetry, Karaikkal Ammai and Andal this evening. Before I tell you, before she starts, in fact, okay, her talk, in fact, let me, in fact, give you a very important announcement. THT will be organizing an Indology festival from November 30th to
Ravi Shankar, 1 second. Your head is getting cut, so you have to tilt the camera a little bit, or you go back. Yeah, fine. Please go ahead.
Okay. So I have to make an important announcement that in the place of site Poetic Kacheri, which we organize every year in the month of December, we are going to have an Indology festival starting from November 30th till December 6th. Every day between 7 and 9 p.m. We'll be having, in fact, both the national and international, in fact, experts, researchers, in fact, addressing, in fact, us on various, in fact, okay, aspects of Indology. See, let me, in fact, tell you a few words about Dr. Sharada. In fact, first of all, we have to thank her twice for accepting, once for accepting immediately our invitation, and second for sacrificing her preference to give this talk in the month of December. Having born, brought up, and studied in Chennai till her MPhil degree, Dr. Sharada received her doctorate from University of Hyderabad for her thesis on 3 Afro-American women playwrights. She now teaches in the Department of English at Sri Venkateswara University, Tirupati. She has over 25 years of teaching experience. She has to her credit a significant body of work that includes research papers, articles, and authorship of a couple of books, one African American playwrights and another Rajan Krishnan and Indian feminist hermeneutics. She has presented papers and given talks in many conferences, national and international, within India and outside India. She was a Fulbright Fellow at the University of Wisconsin-Madison and visited several foreign universities on academic schedules. She has a wide arc of interest. To name a few: African American women writing, gender studies, theater, translation, comparative studies. Her fondness for modern Tamil literature and writers reflects in his paper, writings, and talks on the works of Pudumai Pithan, Rajam Krishnan, Indra Patsadi, Ambai, and Salma. Nevertheless, Dr. Sharada holds Bhakti literature and its women poets in particular closest to her heart. We have now Dr. Sharada talking on women and Bhakti poetry, Karikkal Ammai and Andal. Over to Dr. Sharada.
Good evening, everybody. Well, at the outset, let me thank the Tamil Heritage Trust for having thought of me. I'm no great scholar. I'm a teacher, and I just have a passion and an interest in some of the domains which Mr. Ravi Shankar Tyagarajan has mentioned. So I thank the Tamil Heritage Trust, Mr. Ravi Shankar Tyagarajan and Mr. Badri Seshadri, who have been in touch with me and who have helped me throughout, giving the technical limitations which I suffer from. So I would be speaking today on 2 Bhakti poets, women poets, women who have created, women who are just seen as gods, but they are actually women of power. The power comes both from their devotion and from their capacities to create. go into slideshow, sir? Should I say?
You can
How do
operate.
we-
You can operate the slideshow. It's working fine, right? Yeah.
Oh,
thanks.
yes, sir. Now, how do we look at bhakti? A quick recap on what bhakti is. Etymologically, it comes from the Sanskrit word bhaj, which means love. Davamani gives the Tamil equivalent of it as Anbu. Do we have it only in the bhakti literatures of the vernacular languages? No. You can see its origin in the ancient Indian, the Vedas, and the Upanishad period also. For example, the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, it says, from the unreal, lead me to the real. From darkness to light. From death, lead me to immortality. Well, this is not very different from the prayer which all of us know. Asatoma sadgamaya, tamasoma jyotirgamaya, mrityoma amritagamaya. I mean, all these are attempts at defining bhakti and devotion. There are certain Mahavakyas in our Upanishad, 4 important Mahavakyas, of which 2 we would look at it. Ayam Atma Brahma, which means that the self is the Brahman, the ultimate realization. And the other one is Aham Brahmasmi. It is also found in the Chandogya Upanishad, which speaks about Tat Tvam Asi, which means that thou art. The first mention of bhakti is in the Svetavastara Upanishad. In the Gita also, you have the 3 margas, Bhakti Marga, Jnana Marga, and the Karma Marga. I mean, many Western critics would like to see it as a post-Vedic development, but Indian critics do not accept it. Bhakti, as a perspective, involves 2 competing worldviews, which are renunciation and life affirmation. Most importantly, bhakti negotiates between the intellect and emotion. I mean, these competing worldviews which are present in the panorama of bhakti actually add to the multidimensional depth of bhakti. This sort of a tension between renunciation and life affirmation, which every jivatma, including the souls of the saints which undergo, brings in a beautiful tension into the world of bhakti as it is reflected in their poetic creativity. Most importantly, there is this conflict between the intellect and the emotion, which succeeds, which both of which together contribute towards the creativity of bhakti poetry. The other dimension of the conflict is between the nirguna and the saguna. But when we see it as a conflict, when some critics see it as a conflict, we have A.K. Ramanujan, who sees them not as conflicting, because he says, if you see it as a conflict, what happens is all these conflicts between the emotion, the intellect, and the other conflicts, the nirguna, the saguna, the conflict between the need to enjoy and the penchant for renunciation, he says, all these are not conflicting. If you see them as conflicts, what happens is that it limits our understanding. It's not either, but both. Poetry would be impossible between both the attitudes, is what he says. Let us look at the Bhakti movement. The Bhakti movement is a phenomenal movement, a singular movement, something which is very unique to India. I mean, I would call it both organized and yet unorganized. It is organized in a way because a movement which was born in the Dravida desa. I mean, it is usually called as a beautiful woman born in the Dravida desa. Born in the Dravida desa, this woman, I mean, she emerged as much as Kashmir. You see it in Kashmir Saivism, the wonderful works of Lal Ded and others. And the time for the Bhakti movement is usually given from the 6th century Common Era to sometime just before colonialism. So from the Dravida desa, it impacted even the Sarda desa. Zest, it brought in a sort of a zest and a vigor in an otherwise a very static phase of Indian history. The Bhakti movement was a highly protestive movement. It protested against Buddhism, Jainism, patriarchy, and religious orthodoxy. We all speak in terms of deconstruction and decentering today, but the Bhakti movement decentered many notions, decentered hegemonic notions of God, decentered only the presence, the superiority of the Vedic and the Upanishadic ideals of religion and God. The Bhakti movement was a highly democratic movement because it brought in a beautiful localization of the Vedic gods, okay, which brought in a sort of a religious and a spiritual revolution in India. Most importantly, the Bhakti movement brought in a sort of a subaltern empowerment. For the first time, you have a potter singing poetry. You have a weaver singing poetry. The ordinary women were empowered to sing poetry. So the ordinary, so-called ordinary, I use the word ordinary in inverted commas, the subaltern sections of people entered into the religious domain. It was a novel dimension in the entire Bhakti movement because up to that point of time, religion was highly intellectualized. The Vedic religion or the Margi religion was a highly intellectualized one. The Bhakti movement brought in an emotional dimension, which was the desi type of Bhakti. Bhakti movement made a great impact in the Tamil language and literature. I told you, it is a child of the Dravida desa, a beautiful Dravidian movement. That's how it is called. I've seen many critics calling it so. And it was during the Bhakti movement that the first concrete devotional verse in Tamil appeared. The Sangam poetry was mostly secular, but of course, occasionally there were certain religious references also. Paripadal is one section where there are certain religious references, and Tirumurugatrupade, once again, is a poem which is written on Lord Muruga, once again, a religious poem. What is special when we speak about Bhakti and when we speak about poetic creativity of the Bhakti movement? It becomes imperative for us to look into the dynamics of poetic creativity in a Bhakti poet. What is the aim of a Bhakti poet? Remember, when we look at Bhakti poets, whoever they are, from Laldev to Andal and the Alvars and the Nayanmars, it is a devotional discourse. A discourse charged with emotion, a discourse charged with devotion, and the discourse charged with creativity, because what empowers the Bhakti poet is their devotion. And what do? Let us now analyze the process of poetic creativity as you would see it in a Bhakti poet. The aim is sublime. What is the aim of the Bhakti poet? It is attaining the sublime. I'm tempted to quote Paul Deman, who says, whereas the beautiful is a metaphysical and ideological principle, the sublime aspires to be a transcendental one. How does one reach the sublime? Language as a medium is a transcendental signifier. So the sublime aspires to be a transcendental one. Poetry as a medium is used to denote, to aim at representing the sublime. It's a transcendental signifier. And he makes this beautiful statement that in India, the aesthetic and the epistemological categories cease to be distinct. I mean, episteme and aesthetics are not two different worlds for us. That's a beautiful combination which one finds in India, one of the few nations which have it. Since the culture accepts the ontological dependency of philosophy on figuration. All these three are intertwined: the aesthetics, the epistemics, philosophy, and the ontology. Similarly, devotional poetics have been commented upon by various people. Vijay Mishra, he brings out, he quotes Munshi Ram Sharma, who says, beyond the words of reality, consciousness and time, there is a tattva or an essence. This tattva is not bound to causality, attributes, or time. The aim of bhakti is to enable the bhakta to realize this essence. So what is bhakti? The bhakta realizing that essence. What is the tattva? This tattva is Isvara. How can we find Isvara? So what is devotional poetics? The devotional poetics is an attempt at finding the Isvara, whether it is Isvara or Narayana. The reference is to the principle of sublimity. So bhakti poetry is essentially based on an intense religio-spiritual experience. And poetry, especially as devotional poetry, as a mode of communication, has undergone numerous debates in the academic world. Significantly, Dr. Johnson says that he passes a strong judgment against devotional poetry because he believes that the ungraspable sublime cannot be expressed in a poetic genre. Beautifully stated by Dr. Johnson. He says poetry loses its luster and its power because it is applied to the decoration of something more excellent than itself. Poetry is a medium of expressing the supreme, whether it is Andal or whether it is Karaikkal Ammai or any other religious poetry. So they are using a particular medium to express something which is more excellent than itself. And this could be applied to any art, even if it is sculpture. The sculptor aims at bringing out an image of God. But God as a tattva and a essence is not just there in the sculpture, he's beyond that. Therefore, art becomes only a transcendental signifier, always attempting to reach the signified. But of course, there are other critics like Stanley Fish, Norman Cutler, and A.K. Ramanujan, who believe that despite its inability to completely represent, this genre should be given its due credit. For example, Stanley Fish calls these devotional poems as self-consuming artifacts because these are the artistic products of the mind where the creative subject ceases to have an autonomous existence since he or she considers himself or herself as the instrument of God who may be speaking through him or her. The creator of the devotional verse knows that he cannot compete with the absolute truth of God, but still the creator attempts at a form of deliberate mimetic attempt, okay, wherein he imitates, he mimics whatever is there, the devotion within. So the aim is sublime, and the language of bhakti poetry is highly charged. One of the early expressions of vernacular devotion of the 6th and the 9th century AD is the Tamil Saivism. The Tamil Saivism was a cultural, social, and it was born out of the linguistic ethos of the Tamil race, especially from the Kaveri Delta. G.U. Pope considers the Tamil Saivism as the choicest product of the Tamil intellect. Saivism basically has multiple avatars. Karnataka has its own Saivism, the Veera Shaivism. Kashmir has its own brand of Saivism, the Kashmir Saivism. Basically, Saivism was a staunch opposition to Jainism and Buddhism. The Tamil Saivism is important for merging beautifully with the Tamil landscape, the language, the thought, ethos, and the local gods. Most importantly, Tamil Saivism had the patronage of the Pallava kings, Simha Vishnu and Narsimha Varman. I'm looking at Saivism now because I would start with Karaikkal Ammai. What are the basic philosophies implied in Saivism? It believes in the concept of pati, pasu, and pasam. which refer to Shiva, the individual soul, and the karmic bonds. It believes that the soul is bound by Mala, Karman, and Maya. They are the three fetters which bind the soul. Among the three fetters which bind the soul, the Mala is the most tenacious fetter, which is full of stupor, darkness, and it's a sort of a sheath and a covering, implying debility and night, darkness. How is Mala to be removed? It can be removed only through a process of ripening, devotion, and initiation. The other concept is the Karman, which speaks about action. The actions in human life are positive and negative. Most importantly, there is a residue in each action. And each action, the residue of each action can be transformed into something positive only through devotion. Maya, they believe, is real, but it is deluding. But Maya, if not properly understood, it may lead to the accumulation of more karma. The Saiva texts include the Vedas. The Vedas include the 28 Saiva Tirumurais and the 12 Tirumurais and the 14 Mekanta texts. They believe in the worshipping the omnipotent Shiva, who is omnipresent, and the 5-syllable mantra Namah Shivaya. Let us look at Karaikkal Ammai, the woman who defied the patriarchal norms of femininity. When I look at Karaikkal Ammai, I'm reminded of her devotion. Iravada anbu, Iravada inba anbu, Vendipin venduginrar, Piravamai vendu, Meendum Pirappundel, Unnai Endrum Maravamai vendu. Innum vendum nan magilந்து பாடி அரவாணி ஆடும் போது உன் அடியின் கீழ் இருக்க என்றார். This succinctly sums up her devotion. All the devotion which she expresses in her beautiful concepts, Arpuda Tiruvandadi, Tiruvarattai Manimalai, and Tiruvalankaattu Mutta Tirupadigangal, the three seminal texts of her poetic creativity of this roughly 6th century woman poet. Okay, so what does she ask for? What is the purpose of her creativity? It is a release from the earthly bondage. Piravamai vendum, and I do not want to be born again. Even if I'm born again accidentally, let me always remember you, O Shiva. And I should always be dedicated to you. Among the pantheon of women saints, or the saints themselves, all the Nayanmars, she occupies a seminal place because she is the only poet who is called Ammai. Of course, there are only 3 women poets among the Nayanmars. But she is the only poet who receives the word Ammai from none other than Lord Shiva himself. When she enters Mount Kailasa, as she walks with her hands, Uma Devi, she asks Shiva, who's that lady who comes walking through with her hands? For that, Shiva says, she is Nammai Penum Ammai Khan. See her. She is our mother. Shiva is the only God without Pillai Tamil. A God who has no birth and no death. So Lord Shiva considers 2 people as his parents. Karaikkal Ammai as the mother and Kannappan, Appan, that is the title he gives to Kannappa, Bhakta Kannappa, as the father. So he says, Nammai Penum Ammai Khan. And that is the devotion of Karaikkal Ammai. How does she represent her tattva? In her Tiruvalankaattu Mutta Tirupadigangal, I've just quoted here 3 main concepts there. She says, he is the one who knows. What is the purpose of Shiva? He is the one who knows. He is the one who makes us know. He is the knowledge that knows. He is the truth that knows. He is the one who knows, the one who makes us know. He is himself the knowledge. He is himself the truth. Moreover, he comprises of the primordial elements. I thought of only one, she says in her Arpuda Tiruvandadi. I was focused only on one. I kept only one inside my heart. This singular devotion is the hallmark of Bhakti poetry, whether it is of Alvars or whether it is of the Nayanmars. Andal is dedicated to Vishnu, and Karaikkal Ammai is dedicated singularly to Shiva. So I thought of one only, I was focused on one only, I kept only one inside my heart. Take this away from the context of Karaikkal Ammai, you can apply this easily to Andal also. If I say this has been written by Andal also, if somebody says that, I'm sure we would believe it. That is the singular devotion that all these saint poets had. Most importantly, what is crucial about these poets is the concept of Saranagati and the total surrender. Ammai says, I decided to eradicate all my births. I have become a servant to the God who wears an elephant skin. He has a third eye in his forehead, and he's smeared with sacred ash. So, what is jnana? Jnana is asking for no more births. It's not asking, let me be born as somebody in the White House. Let me be born as somebody in power. Well, that is not jnana, that is ajnana. The highest jnana is asking for the eradication of births from the karmic cycle of birth and death. And she says this is possible, she understands, only if she can surrender herself totally to the Lord. I have become a servant to the God. What type of a God is he? Not an ornamented God, a God who's ornamented only with an elephant skin. Not a very beautiful God by worldly standards. This God who has a third eye in his forehead, who smears the sacred ash only on his body and nothing else. So her poetic creativity includes Arpuda Tiruvandadi, which consists of 101 Venpa verses, the sacred linked verses of wonder, Tiruvandadi, wherein the Andam is the Adi. The end word of a poem becomes the beginning of the next line. Thiruvirattai Manimale, which alternates between Kattalai Kalithurai, Antadi and the Venpa forms. Then Thiruvalankaattu Mootha Tirupadigangal, which consists of 2 decades. Let us look at the life of Karaikkal. She was born in Karikkal. A beautiful temple stands there even to this day. Born into a business family as the daughter of Dhanadatta. From childhood, she was a woman. She had seen her father praying to Lord Shiva, and she developed a love for Shiva even from her childhood days, the way in which Andal developed a love for Ranganatha from her childhood days when she had seen her father Vishnu Chittan praying, Periyalvar, praying to Ranganatha. So from childhood, she was immensely attracted to Lord Shiva. At the right age, she was married to Paramadatta. And after her marriage, she realizes, as she was leading the life of a samsara, one day her husband sends home 2 mangoes. All of us know the story. And 2 mangoes. And as she is cooking, she sees a Shiva ascetic who comes. And he asks for food. And because there is nothing left, she gives him a bit of rice and one of the mangoes which her husband has sent. The ascetic eats it, blesses her and go away. Her husband comes and he asks for the mango. She gives the remaining one. And the husband likes the taste and he asks for another one. She does not know what to do. She prays to God and she gives, and he bestows her with the boon of mango. She gives that to her husband. He tastes it and he wants another one. When she does not know what to do, she prays to God and she gets another one. He asks her, how is it this so heavenly in taste? It's like ambrosia. And she confesses all that has happened. He does not trust her and he asks her if he could get her another mango like that. She procures that and she gives it to him. And once she gives it to him, the mango disappears once it goes to the hands of her husband. And so the husband realizes that here is a woman of immense power. And therefore, he renounces his samsaric bonds with her. He goes away to another town. And he gets married to another woman. He has a daughter and he names that daughter Punitavati, which is her actual name. Punitavati realizes that there is no need for this particular body, a body which is not very useful for the husband. And so she assumes a Gaulish form. The pay. I do not find an equivalent as such when I can say what it is. The nearest I could use is the term Gaulish. And it is with this form that she sings all the beautiful poetic compositions for Shiva. Poem after poem, she sculpts, she gives almost a word sculpture of Shiva. Arpuda Tiruvandadi is all about her dedication for Shiva. The 100 songs in Arpuda Tiruvandadi are all for Shiva, the 101 songs there. It is almost a word sculpture of Lord Shiva. And she mentions how beautiful he is. He's the one, and how he's composed of all the 5 elements, and how he's adorned with the crescent moon, the Ganga, and the snake. And the Lord who masters the primordial elements, and how difficult it is to reach the Lord. You cannot reach the Lord with bookish knowledge, because who do not have real knowledge of the truth, let them wander. To understand the God, the nature of the one, he says, is beyond limits, and that can be practiced only through bhakti. He will appear only to such people. She describes Shiva beautifully as the one who wears a snake ornament and as the one who wears ashes. His greatness is not known by others, but others know that he is the great consciousness. Our Lord, wearing the bones of others, happily dances along with the powerful ghouls in the fire at night. This is the beautiful, it's almost a word sculpture of Lord Shiva that she gives. But at the same time, she understands that through her poetry, that her aim is total surrender. I have taken refuge in you, and I live as your servant. Why have you not bestowed your grace on me, she asks. And therefore she says he's very easy to see. How can you see him? You can see him only through the concept of bhakti. Therefore, all her works are dedicated to honor Shiva. Especially Arpuda Tiruvandadi, she praises him in all his multi-dimensions of beauty. It is significant that as far as Shiva is concerned, where does he dance? He dances in the landscape of the cremation ground. It is a very important concept, the cremation ground. Just before we move to the cremation ground, let us look at what the concept of paying in Karaikkal Ammai. We see her, the emaciated form of Karaikkal Ammai, this sculptural image, you see her. This is the form which has been given to us by sculptures. This is the form of the predominant motif in the poetry of Ammai is her pay form. Elaine Craddock has rightly described Ammai as Shiva's demon devotee in her book on Ammai. It is her pay appearance and her devotion to the Lord who wears a garland of skulls and who's also a dancer in the cremation ground that endures her most to the Lord. Sekira's Periyapuranam presents Ammai as having voluntarily embraced a horrific form. He says, I request you to remove the sack of flesh that bears my beauty. Instead, give me, your servant, the form of gowls who venerate your sacred feet in that place. This is a prose translation of Sekira's Periyapuranam. It is saying, why does she embrace the pay form? What is it which is so significant about the pay form? Remember, we are living in an age when there is a lotion from the tip of your hair to the tip of your toe, when a woman would like to adorn themselves. Women who would like to usually beautify themselves. Andal beautifies herself, the body. That is one type of bhakti. Karaikkal Ammai is a very different type of bhakti. She gives up the bodily form as such. Therefore, she sheds all her beauty that her fleshly body possessed. And she becomes a body of bones in the form of a gaul. This gaul is not an ordinary gaul, but a pei who's venerated by everybody on earth. So, how should we look at the pei form of Karaikkal Ammai? Her embracement of the pei form is not punitive at all. But indeed, the pei form is an act of liberation, since she simultaneously releases herself from the gendered self. She also releases herself from a gynecological existence, and she easily surpasses her status of the so-called second sex. So such liberatory attempts of women, saint poets, have certain literary parallels. The Buddhist Therigathas or the songs of the nuns, wherein there are epiphanic experiences which speak about the constrictions of secular life. So when Karaikkal Ammai renounces secular life, it is an epiphanic experience. One of the Buddhist Therigathas, she says, so free am I, so gloriously free, free from petty things, from mortar, from pestle, and from a twisted lord, free from rebirth and death am I, and all that has held me down is hurled away, says the Buddhist poet. So this sort of a liberation is achieved by certain Buddhist poets. So they pay rich accolades to the delivery from domestic drudgeries and petty shackles which bind them. But Ammai's attainment of freedom is more radical and revolutionary than these Buddhist women, because she attempts at the total renunciation of her physical form, which is unheard of in the chronicles of Bhakti poetry. They have naturally aged. These Buddhist nuns have naturally aged. But she, in her youthful age, she has willfully embraced this pay form. Mirabai renounces palace life. Akka Mahadevi renounces clothes. But none renounce their female self, and they willfully adorn the form of a pay, as has done Ammai. Her references to pay is also abundant in Sangampuram poetry, where there are descriptions of the demonesses who howl in the wastelands, which are desolate, and they are filled with dry thorns, where they chew dry corpse. So where do these pay exist? The pays exist in the cremation ground. They exist in the cremation ground because in the cremation ground, you have the demonesses who chew their corpses. They have their bodies consumed, the bloodless flesh. Ammai's poetry is undoubtedly influenced by the Sangam poetry, but she does not fail to modify it, since the Sangam poet's aim is to depict a war scene in a poetic manner, whereas the aim of Ammai's poetry is bhakti and saranagati, by attempting to lay bare the sublime. So this is in consonance with her state of spiritual awareness. She deliberately chooses the pay form. Where do the pays dwell? The Pays dwell in the cremation ground. How is it? It is one of the most phenomenal aspects of Bhakti poetry and Bhakti which you see in Karaikkal Ammai, because she sees philosophy in the cremation ground. A place of desolateness, a place of darkness, and a place where nothing exists. What is it that you find in a cremation ground? In the cremation ground, it is nothing but wilderness. There are corpses burning. There are corpses burning. And there are other grounds which exist there. This is beautifully brought out in her Tiruvalankattu Mootha Tirupati Gangal. I mean, she has sung these songs in the Kadu, Tiruvalankattu. She goes to Kailasa by hands, and then from there, Lord Shiva commands her to go to Tiruvalankattu, and she goes there, and there she witnesses the beautiful dance of Lord Shiva. She describes herself thus: a female ghoul with withered breasts, bulging veins, hollow eyes, white teeth, shriveled stomach, red hair, 2 fangs, bony ankles, and elongated shrimps. Stays in the cemetery, howling angrily. This is her self-description. This is how I look. And I'm sure that all the sculptors have taken this. If you see, if you follow what I read, and if you see this image, you will understand how the sculptors have created this sculpture out of the word sculpture, which she has given. So this is the place where my Lord dances in the fire with a cool body. The place around is hot and burning with flames. But the Lord dancing there alone is cool. Why? His streaming hair flying in the 8 directions. This is the place, Tiruvalankattu. Tiruvalankattu, very close, all of us know it is very close to Tiruvallur. And I have visited the place, and I can assume that many, many years ago, this should have been the natural description of that land. What is the flora and the fauna which she sees there? The cremation ground, or the Tiruvalankattu, what she sees there. When she goes there, she sees a ghoul which is lifting her leg. A ghost there, she pulls out a charred piece of firewood, extinguishes it, grinds it into a collyrium, and she paints her eyes conspicuously. This is the sight which she sees, Karaikkal Ammai sees there. The other pays there, what they do? They grind the coal into a collyrium and apply it to their eyes. And seeing an animal, she gets frightened and jumps onto a burning corpse in the cremation ground. Then the flora and fauna include the small fox there. Then the pisasar, she mentions the different types of owls, the partridge, the eagle, the rock-horned owl, and the different types of owls. Then there are dances there specific to that particular landscapes. The landscape is inhabited by demons with flaming mouths, rolling and fiery eyes, the Tunangai dance, and they go and bring out a burning corpse from the fire and they eat the flesh. And the hero's legs, which gives a specific type of dance. And there are corpses all around. And for this, there is a music. The different types of drum which she speaks about, the kettle drum, the murasu drum, the mattalam, the karatikai, the vanangai, the udukkai, and all types of drums. This is the music. These 2 poems, Tiruvalankattu Mootha Tirupati Gangal, they are set to music, not Arpuda Tiruvandati or the Tiruvarattai Manimalai. These are the 2 poems which are set to music. And they are strong ghouls whose face paint come to each other. They beat each other. They keep shouting each other. But in spite of being there, Karaikkal Ammai she concludes the signature verse by saying that those who are able to recite the 10 verses in classical Tamil by Karikkal Ammai with uncombed hair on the feet of the Lord, who is the auspicious Thiruvalankaadu, will attain the bliss of reaching Siva. It is the same feeling which she moves on with, is the same mood with which she creates the second Pathikam. There you have the flora and fauna of the 80, the 11 trees, and the gulls eating the corpses there. It's a terrifying symmetry. But even there, although the symmetry is terrifying, the beautiful Lord dances holding fire in his hand. The owl flaps its wings and hoots. It's a kukai owl, then the woman owl, then there is an old jackal which howls, and the pay is all around there. And the Lord walks around there like a madman. There is a thorn bush which is burning. There is also a rock-horned owl. And the entire desiccated, the cremation ground is desiccated. The little pays all around their groups, and they hear crackling noises. And it is filled with smoke from the fires of funeral pyres. It is surrounded by bamboo groves. There are vultures, there are demons. The monkeys jump around. Rhythmic music is played there. The different drums and the parai drums beat. The parai, as Karaikkal Ammai uses it, is very different in terms of its tenor and music when compared to the parai that Andal we would see using it in her beautiful Tirupavai and Tirupavai especially. So it is a dark burning ground with the Indu creeper, and it is there in such a ground that the Lord dances without blemish. For those who dance and sing, and this Pathikam also ends with her saying that whoever sings these, they would attain mukti. What is significant about these things is the fact that she is able to see philosophy and religion in a world of shunya. The shunya or nothingness is also there in the Veerashaivism of Karnataka. You have the Shurya Sampadane, a very important literary work there. So out of this state of a desolateness, she sees something sublime. The sublimity is achieved through the seemingly mundane, and moksha is achieved there in Karaikkal Ammai. I would show you now some of the pictorial representations of Karaikkal Ammai. This is the Karaikkal Ammai's representation as you see it in the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art, which is in the Kansas City, United States. And it is the 11th century work, and this is the sculpture there. Then this is the Victoria and Albert's collection, which you see there. And of course, this is also the place from Tamil Nadu. You can see her singing with the cymbals there. This is a 13th century sculpture. The artist is unknown. It is a copper image. This is one of the pictorial representations of she received giving the mango to her husband. Another colored image of the same. She walking with her hands. The journey to Kailasa, estimated, I tried it on a Google map, it says 2,243 kilometers. I mean, I would like to say something. There are certain critics who say that this may not be real at all. And how could a woman walk with her feet for more than 2,000 kilometers? And they say that this cannot be true because it looks like a miracle. And there are certain sections who think that it is a miracle and it cannot be true. I do not want to name the critics. But I think that with yoga, anything is possible. She was a yogini. She had tantric powers within her. Her devotion gave her the powers, and that's why this is undoubtedly a historical truth. This was a conversation which I had with a yogi, a person who performs yoga. And so when I asked him, okay, I wanted this confirmation. This was when I was writing this paper, when I was doing some work on Karaikkal Ammai. I was reading through many of the conflicting statements given by Vijay Ramaswamy and many other people who think that it cannot be truth, and they were comparing her with the miracle which happens with Joan of Arc and other things, and saying this cannot be true. And probably she was emaciated, that appearance came because she did not eat much or when she was starving. But a starving woman cannot go to Kailasa. That's what I would feel. If you starve, you die. Anyhow, this is the distance that she had traveled, and it is possible through yogic powers, and she was a yogini. Okay, it was a journey, and also from there she came all the way to Tiruvalankadu. And these are the other representations in Cambodia. Adavallan and Karaikkal Ammai are in the right side. You could see there. It is Karaikkal Ammai there. It was the architectural style, and this was in Cambodia. Then here also you can see Karaikkal Ammai to his left here. The woman playing the music with cymbals. This is Karaikkal Ammai. This is Cambodia, where work has gone. And this is an image of the Karikkal Amman's temple. I had been there a few years ago. Twice I have been there. A small and a humble temple it is. This is the inner image of the goddess. The mango festival, which is very significant there. Which is conducted to this day, the Mangani Tiruvizha. This is the beautiful temple at Tiruvalankadu. Lovely temple it is. I have been there. But these are the internet images which I'm showing you, because my images won't be as good as what is there. The Vadaranyeswara temple there, where she saw this beautiful dance. Image. Karaikkal Ammai has been filmed. This is the 1943 film. I have not seen this. Then the other film which came out in 1972, I have seen this film as a child. I don't remember if it was a Broadway theater or the Wellington Theater in Chennai, one of these two theaters. I remember watching this film, Karaikkal Ammai. I watched it later, once again in YouTube. This is the wonderful film. What is different about this filmic representation is the fact that initially it is Lakshmi, film actress Lakshmi, the Tamil actress Lakshmi, who acts as Punitavati. And later, instead of showing a gaulish or an emaciated form, it won't be appealing for a film audience. It was K.P. Sundarambal who has acted as Karaikkal Ammai. I remember the voice, the sterling voice of that woman, the distinct voice of that woman, the lovely songs, and very well rendered, I would say. And the music was none other than by Kunnapudi Vaidyanathan. These are some of the translations of books on Karaikkal Ammai. I have read Elaine Craddock, and much before Elaine Craddock, you have Sasivalli, who had translated Karaikkal Ammai's poetic works into English. That was by the Tamil Institute at Madras. But Elaine Craddock and most importantly, Karen Pechulis, I've loved her translation, her work on Karaikkal Ammai. And this is also interpreting devotion. This is also a wonderful work on Karaikkal Ammai. And I have published an article wherein I had translated the story of Karaikkal Ammai, not in the prose form, but in a poetic form, from poetry to poetry. That's what I did make a humble attempt at it. Then her translation into French by Philosat, and this is the pictures of Karaikkal Ammai, photographs by Peter de Brugen, a French writer. So she has been translated into French and probably many other languages. Okay. This is about Karaikkal Ammai. From the world of Karaikkal Ammai, we now move to the world of Andal. Two different forms of devotion. Two different forms of bhakti, divergent forms of bhakti, but yet they converge at one particular place because both are devotion. Both of them are young women. It is usually thought that Andal is young and Karaikkal Ammai is old. Even Karaikkal Ammai would not have been very old. Given those days when women were married very young, Punitavati should also have been around 12 or 13 probably when she would have been married. And very soon she gave up samsara. Andal also is a very young woman. Vaishnava Bhakti that she represents. Andal's place in the genealogy of Tamil Bhakti is unique because she is one of the earliest literary accounts of Andal's life, appears in the Sanskrit Divyasuri Charitrams and also in the Guru Parampara Prabhavam. What is unique about Andal as an Alvar? Among the 12 Alvars, what is unique about Andal? Periyavasan Pillai, he gives a very significant comment about Andal's status as a devotee. He says the difference between those who think that the body is the self and the seers who have attained knowledge of the true character of the self is the difference between the size of a great mountain and an atom. And this is also the difference between the other Alvars and Periyalvar, and also the difference between Periyalvar and Andal. So, there is a difference between the other Alvars and Periyalvars. Periyalvar is superior to other Alvars. And between Periyalvar and Andal also, Andal is a superior devotee, says Periyavasan Pillai. Why is she different from them? He says, when our Lord revealed himself, as far as the other Alvars are concerned, the Lord reveals himself to wake up the other Alvars who are in a state of a sleeping samsara. But Andal is different because among the other Alvars, Andal is the one who goes and wakes up the Lord. So she is superior in terms of her devotion. Her Tirupavai and Nachiyar Tirumozhi are included in the first 1000 Mudalayiram of the Nalayira Divya Prabandham. The Tirupavai, which consists of 30 verses, which consists of 8 lines of Kalipa meter. It is a plural voiced poem and it's a community poem wherein a group of young girls vigorously awaken each other to participate in a ritual cleansing bath. So all the young girls approach Krishna's house to awaken the Lord. The Neeradal, which is implied in Tirupavai. In Tirupavai, there is a Neeradal. The Neeradal originally was Thai Neeradal. Thai Neeradal, which is done in January. But this is another Neeradal. Probably its ancestors, precursors could be the Katyayani Vratam, which has been mentioned in the earlier literature. Or probably some critics think that Andal has appropriated the Thai Neeradal and the Katyayani Vratam to create her own form of Neeradal. But whatever form it is, it could be an appropriation. Even if it is an appropriation, the aim is the bath, which is a purgatory act, the purification of not just the body, but the soul. The vow is to not just to marry, but to reach the Lord. And the vow is to attain moksha, which is the aim of all her creativity. So this is special about Andal. Andal's very birth, it's very significant. It's a unique phenomenon. She is the only female among the Alvars. The year is Nala. The month was Ashada and the star is Puram and the Samayam was Chaturdasi, a moment which was celebrated in Indian mystic poetry. She is considered to be a unique prodigy of the Anjakudi. And Krishnadevaraya in his Amukta Malyada, which is a tribute to Andal, he says, there nearer a wide garden path, beyond a clearing decorated with muggulu that sparkle like emeralds in the shade of green trees, next to a pond filled with white water lilies by the edge of a tulasi grove, he saw a baby girl, the auspicious one. It was a divine radiance. She never blinked. And she gives Matru Vatsalya to her mother so that she breastfeeds her. And Andal's poetry, the Nachiyar Tirumozhi and Tirupavai, are important for two things: the concepts of nature mysticism and the concept of bridal mysticism. Nature mysticism is one of the cornerstones of Andal's bhakti. Nature mysticism, nature mysticism and bridal mysticism. Let us look at bridal mysticism. Bridal mysticism is also found in other religious texts like the Old Testaments and the New Testaments. You find it also in Catholicism and in German philosopher Nicholas, and German philosophers and Jewish mystical literature. The Sufi poets also speak in terms of bridal mysticism. And bridal mysticism, as far as Andal is concerned, is a mode of poetic devotion and devotional poetics. It is written in the Nayaka Nayaki Bhava, in the Madhura Bhakti mode. There is an attribution of human feelings and emotions. Bridal mysticism brought down devotion to the level of the ordinary, the normal, the uneducated, and the uninitiated. Bridal mysticism is a contrast to the intellectual and the highly stylistic and organized mysticism of the Vedic tradition. Andal and both the Alvars and the Nayanmars utilize this bridal mystic mode. In the poetry, Manika Vasagar also says, eternal bridegroom is he, the paragon of beauty is he resides in me, the mother. Andal uses the bridal mystic mode to explicitly state her bhakti. Bhakti is a unique process. The devotee burns, the bhakta burns in the process of bhakti. There is a process of intense burning. And this intense burning is a product of the intense yearning for the Lord. The devotee wanders, discovers, and seeks different modes of fulfillment. Akkamaha Devi says, "Oh mother, I burned in a flameless fire. Oh mother, I suffered a bloodless wound. Mother, I tossed without a pleasure." The burning desire or the quest is found in all devotional poetry. St. Augustine's Confessions, it speaks of a burning desire. "Oh Lord, thou pluckest me out," he says. This burning desire aims at elevation from a bare and a mundane existence to a state of sublime union. The Pave Nonbu is an attempt at bridal mysticism. It is a virginity vow, a nuptial vow, not a tale of a single woman, but this Pave Nonbu is meant for all other women. And this Pave Nonbu has its counterpart in Shaivism also, because you see it in Manika Vasakar's Thiruvempavai, which are 20 songs of waking up the Lord. It is pertinent to note that Aviroti Alvar, a Jain poet who converted to Jainism from Sri Vaishnavism, he created the Pave Prapattu in praise of Arhat, the Lord of the Jains, and also 20 verses he created. Andal's Pave Nonbu is a prelude to the mystic union, which is contained in the 30 verses. It is a communal, they are a set of communal poems because it invokes all the cowherd women. It's a highly democratic poem since she is the daughter of a Brahmin priest who assumes the form of a cowherd woman in order to be wedded to the Lord. The tone of the poems, the Tirupavai, is unique. It is interesting to note that the bridal mysticism is also multifaceted. She applies different linguistic registers in both Tirupavai and Nachiyar Tirumozhi put together. Number one, there is plain singing, wherein she sings lyrically, laying bare her soulful yearning. The first verse of Tirupavai, Margali Tingal Madinireindha Nannala, that is a plain singing. And then verse 4 of Tirupavai, Arimazhai Kanna, okay, which is plain singing. Then she also sings in a mood of anger, which you see there. in Tirupavai. Keesu keesennu maanai saattan kalandu pesiya pecharavam ketiyalo peipenni. Can't you hear the rousing chatter of birds? You witless ghost of a girl, don't you hear? And then in the other verse, when Tumani Madathu, okay, verse 9, she says, Mommy, wake her up. Is your daughter mute? Unmagaldan umayo andi chevido anantalu. Is your daughter mute or deaf? Is she weary? Perhaps she is enchanted into a deep sleep. Then there is a mood of reverence also. The last 10 verses of Tirupavai, there is a mood of reverence. She surrenders. So the beautiful poetic registers which Andal brings. In Nachiyar Tirumozhi, the consort is Govinda. The theory of bridal mysticism, the concept of bridal mysticism is more intense in Nachiyar Tirumozhi. All the 143 stanzas are depicted in the Viraha mode. The Viraha mode is beautifully enunciated even by Norman Cutler in his Songs of Viraha. So where in the Viraha mode she asks, unite me with the Lord of Venkatan, who holds his hand, the disc tipped with fire. She invokes Kama and his brother Sana, and she asks them, "Oh Kamadeva, I worship you 3 times a day. I offer you flowers at your feet." She pours her endless tears, unfulfilled love, and pitiful cries. The bridal mystic mode is reflected through different acts. There is a child's play. She engages in a child's play, like building sand castles with white sieved sand. She pleads with the Lord. She plays with the Lord. "Oh, do you intend to break over our sand castles and our hearts as well?" she asks. "Oh Lord, who has tasted the sweetness of Sita's lips, don't break our sand castles," she says. So the bridal mysticism takes numerous nuances in terms of tone. She pleads with the Lord not to disturb their child's play. Then she even scolds the Lord not to indulge in child's play. "What is this childishness? Don't you think it is cruel? Please return our clothes to us," she asks. Then there is also the mood of playful jealousy through the metaphor of the conch and the panchajanya, the sound of the blowing conch, which is represented. And the shankas, the beautiful representation of the shankas, Karpuram narumo, Kamalapu narumo, are they fragrant as camphor? Or are they as fragrant as lotus? Or do those coral red lips taste so sweet? So the comparisons, her jealousy with the Panchajanya or the conch, all these are beautiful acts of love, the playful acts of love in bridal mysticism. Then the entire 7th stanza is a dedication or a tribute to the conch or the Panchajanya. Different moods she uses. She asks the conch, "You were born in the sea. You have been nurtured in the Panchajanya, in the Panchajanya's body. You are the vanquisher of the demon Panchajanya, and you are beautiful." And finally, she ends it with a tone of envy. "Great and glorious conch, 16,000 women watch you. You sip the nectar of Madhava's lips. If you don't share that which belongs to all, why shouldn't they quarrel with you?" she asks. Look at the different poetic registers which she uses as a young and a beautiful poet. A tone of seeming envy, a tone of playful anger, but it is actually a benediction since she is praising the Lord through the tone of anger. Then the heights of bridal mysticism is attained in the beautiful Song of Varanam, which is the acme of bridal mysticism, wherein she dreams of her wedding with the Lord, the Narana, approaching her with ceremonious pomp and splendor, and surrounded by 1,000 elephants. The guests include Indra and the entire clan of gods. And towards the end, she mentions that Kode has woven this garland of pure Tamil for the dream of her Lord. And this recitation she believes would bring virtuous progeny, but usually it is sung for marriages. So she believes in the process of having progeny. So along with the bridal mysticism, the process of bridal mysticism is not a simple one because it involves the process of nature mysticism. Nature and Andal are deeply intertwined. In fact, it is impossible to separate one from my other. from the other, because she is a foundling child of nature. The earth is her mother. I mean, the Indian conception of nature as such is very different from the Western conception of nature. You see that not just in Andal, but even in the earlier books like Bana's Kadambari. You can see it's a wonderful ecotopia which you see there. And the Rigvedic hymns praise nature. And this is a stark contrast when the human life is seen as a microcosm of the macrocosm. And this is a stark contrast to the great chain of being which you find in the Western world, which you find it in Plato and in Aristotle's Historia Animalium, wherein there is a hierarchical structure of the universe with God at the top and the animal and the mineral world right at the bottom and the human being in between. We do not have such a hierarchical structure as far as Indian philosophy and Indian perspective is concerned, because we believe in a peaceful coexistence when all nature is found in the human being and human being is a part of all nature. In fact, Vishnu himself is a manifestation of nature. Out of Vishnu, the universe has risen. In him, it exists. It is he who governs its existence and destruction. He is the universe, says one of the Upanishads. So Andal as a Vaishnavite Alva does not merely praise nature, but by praising nature, she is praising Vishnu in his ecological avatar. And as a Dravidian woman and as a founding child of Mother Earth, I would like to quote Professor Purushottama Billimoria, who says that he focuses on the Dravidian unity, which was extremely ancient since the Indus Valley civilization. He says it presents an archaeological findings which were at least 3,000 years old. The human fusion with nature, which you find in India. And the Indus Valley scripts project a strong worship of a feminine form of earth divinity, which he finds specifically among the Dravidians. So Andal as a child of earth and as a foundling child of the earth praises the earth and praises nature. And in fact, when one should look at Andal's description of nature, before we look at Andal, one should also be reminded of the Tirupalli Ezhchi, okay, which speaks about the description, the awakening, and the beautiful tributes. Kadiravan Gunadise Sigaramman Danaindan, Ganayirula Gandradu Malayam Kalayam Poidai, Madhuvirinde Urgina Mamalar Ellam, Vanavar Arasargal Vandu Vandini. So that is a beautiful description of nature, the awakening of nature. It's not just the nature which is awakened, but the Atman, the Jivatman, which is awakened. So Tirupavai is a greater awakening. It is a simultaneous praise of nature as much as it is a praise of Ranganatha. And then nature is depicted in its beautiful images, sensuous images, through the kuil, through the songs, and through the kili, and the kolam, the Thainiradal, etc., which you find in Nachiyar Tirumoli. She looks forward for a union with the Lord. But by describing nature, she asks, Lord, unite me with the Lord of Venkatam, who holds his hand, the disc tipped with fire. The parai which she uses there is polyvalent in terms of meaning, and the kuil, the parai are all beautiful. The kuil and the kili which she describes. The kuil, she makes a request to the kuil. The kuil, why don't you go and convey my love to the Lord? Second time, later, she gives a plea to the kuil. O kuil who sings drunkenly, having sipped the honey of the bursting sampaka flowers, don't evade me, she says. And then she gives it in a mood of threat or anger. She threatens the kuil. Okay, if you don't sing your song to the Lord, if you don't convey my message of love to him, I will drive you away, she says. Why does she choose the kuil? It could be for two reasons. The kuil can both speak and hear, And moreover, it can navigate long distances and convey her love. The Kuil section also echoes several motifs which are common in Sangam literature, because both Karaikkal Ammai and Andal and most of the Bhakti poets are influenced by Sangam literature. So after the Kuil, it is the parrot, and it is Andal's pet parrot. The parrot occurs also several times in the poem, and she also promises the parrot as a companion to the Kuil. She gives it a bribe of fruits and asks the parrot to convey its love to Govinda. But the parrot would not listen. Okay, but she continues to play. So Bhakti poetry is always confessional poetry. The devotee lays bare his or her inner yearnings, and nature is used as a beautiful metaphor in Andal to describe her devotion. She says, I am caught in a net of desire, Sridhara, lustrous as the green-hued parrot. But release me from this bondage. Tell him of my terrible disease. And nature, which is a part of the Indian tradition, is used by Andal in its beauteous form, beautifully to describe love. And George Hart, he says, he pays a beautiful tribute to Andal and her connection with nature thus. Andal is not someone different from the world, he says. Andal is an integral part of it. Like its flora, like its fauna, it grows slowly and surely. Andal's devotion is as natural and as inevitable as the flowering of a tree or the course of a river. So Andal and nature are not too different from. Andal is nature and nature is Andal as far as George Hart is concerned. So we can see, have a look at her poetic compositions. And most importantly, this is the temple, Srivilliputtur, and Andal Uchavams, which take place there. The beautiful parrots, which we described. And these are the literary representations of Andal, as you see there. Vidya Dehejia's book. Then the film Andal, I have not seen it, but I know that such a film exists. And the first translation of in English, which I read, was P.S. Sundaram by the Anantacharya Indological Foundation. That was a good book. And then this specific book by Archana Venkatesan, a book worth mentioning. It's one of the most beautiful descriptions of elucidations of Tirupavai and Nachiyar Tirumozhi, and wonderful translation which he has done. Then a very creative translation of Andal by Priya Sarukai Chabriya and Ravi Shankar. Most importantly, I must mention Amukta Malyada, which is a work on Andal. One of the finest tributes to Andal could be in Amukta Malyada. And it's the crowning glory of Telugu literature it is. And this is once again a novel. Well, when I speak about Andal, I cannot but speak about the Chennai connection with Andal and Georgetown connection with Andal. Because when we speak about Andal, all of us know that Andal and the recitation of the Tirupavai and the Nachiyar Tirumozhi is an integral part of the worship in Tirumala. The Tirupavai is sung in all the 30 days of Margazhi, and the Nachiyar Tirumozhi is also sung every day. Tirupavai is sung during the Tomala Seva also every day. And Nachiyar Tirumozhi is recited every Thursday during the Abhishekam. And at a very auspicious moment, it is sung when the goddess is temporarily removed from the Vakshasthala of the Lord. The Lord cannot bear the separation of his consort even momentarily. And within that, at that particular time, it is sung. And when I spoke to a priest, he said that for a few days, just before Kartika Purnami, it is not sung. Tirupavai is not sung because that signifies a few days wherein Tirumangai Alvar takes away one of the Alvars. And because that Alvar is not, Periyalvar is not present there for some time, during their absence, it is considered to be auspicious not to sing, recite Nachiyar Tirupavai. But once again, it is resumed from the day of Margaret. So in Madras, Georgetown, you have this place known as Gita Mandiram. And my introduction to Andal came not from books, but the way in which it was spoken. I come from a Telugu-speaking family. I was born, brought up in Chennai. And you have these two beautiful places in Georgetown. One is known as the Gita Mandiram, which is the older one. And then you have the Venkateswara Mandiram, where Andal is, so you have every month, the Pura Nakshatram is celebrated there. And Adipuram is a moment to be celebrated. Beautiful here. Here are the beautiful women who beautified Andal there in the Gita Mandiram, the Adipura Uchamam there, which takes place. And this is the beautiful decoration of Andal there. It is a culture which needs to be explicated and explored. And apart from this, I know about a Telugu family who had migrated from Vijayanagaram, and they have settled down in Chennai. They used to stay in Parktown earlier, and later I think they are now at T Nagar. Every Friday there is a grand Andal Puja in their house. And to carry on tradition, to carry on culture, one need not get a degrees from an Oxford or a Cambridge. I think that it comes as a part of a culture. These women are the living traditions of Andal, I would say that. I have seen their, from my childhood days, these women would get together and they would sing their songs in Telugu on Andal. These are the beautiful images of that particular place. Thank you. I conclude my talk. And we hope that in these days of Corona, the mere recitation of these songs would definitely make the world Corona free. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sharada. That is a wonderful talk. There are some questions, and I also want to ask a few questions. But sure. I want a brief interruption where we want to talk about the Indology festival that we are planning. So okay. I will have a brief presentation, just about 5-6 slides, giving an introduction of the speakers who will be coming, who have agreed so far, and few more speakers are on the line. So just give me a minute.
Sir, it's yours.
Show this, and then we will get back to a set of questions that we want to ask. So there it is. Just a minute. Yeah. For all of you listeners, we have what we have planned is starting from November 30th to December 6th. We have 7 days, 16 speakers, 12 talks. That's what has been planned. I will give you the themes for each one. So we have the topics are on Indian prehistory, Indus Valley civilization, on temple architecture, both the Nagara, North Indian and the South Indian temple architecture, specifically on Chola bronzes, on heritage conservation, on Indian mathematics. So it's a sort of medley of topics. There are very interesting speakers. We have a keynote address from Dr. Vilaynur Ramachandran. We have inaugural address from great scholar Dr. Nagaswamy. We have engineer and researcher on some of the topics on Indus Valley. Rajesh Rao from US, who will be talking about Harappan civilization. We have Dr. Tom Levy, who will talk about the Chola bronze and the bronze casters. We have Dr. Sharada Srinivasan, who will talk about the science of the Chola bronzes. We have a very celebrated scholar of Indian temple architecture, Professor Adam Hardy, will be talking about the North Indian temple architecture and its a comparison with the South Indian temple architecture. We have Professor Shankar Narayanan, who will specifically focus on the South Indian temple architecture. We have a panel discussion of taking heritage to youngsters, which will involve Anirudh Kanisetti, Reena Puri, Anirudh Kaniseti had an excellent podcast series on Indian history. Dinapuri is the editor of Amar Chitrakatha, and we all know how much of great work Amar Chitrakatha has done to take heritage, Indian heritage, to little children and youngsters in general. And Dr. Chitra Madhavan, who through her talks have taken Indian history and heritage and temple architecture and iconography to various places. And Vikramjit Ruprai is a heritage photographer who has also talked. Many of them have already presented in this forum. So they will be in a panel discussion. We have Professor Swaminathan, who is a founder of Tamil Heritage Trust. He will be presenting his views on Mallai and Chittanavasal and plans for them. I will be talking about mathematics, and there are a few more we are expecting to be added to this. There are a couple of competitions going on, and I would request all the viewers to focus on them. We have been promoting it heavily. We want people to send us a short video of a heritage monument, on any Indian heritage monument, highlighting the features that you like the most. There are prizes for this competition. There is also another competition, which is to showcase a lesser known temple. Wherever you go across India, anywhere within a kilometer, you would see a fantastic heritage location. Many of them are just languishing because nobody even knows about them. So we would want you to highlight some of them. So please, participate in these two competitions. Don't look at it as a competition, but an opportunity to present this to a larger audience. We want this these two events to be aligned with the it's part of the larger Indology festival that we have planned. So with that, let me these are the details. You can we will share the link. You can go to Facebook and access Tamil Heritage Trust. That will provide you with details. Let's now go back to our session for question and answer. That was a fantastic talk. But let me, there are a few questions which I will come to very quickly. But particularly, let's start with the very contrast between the two poets, saints that you brought out. Right, one is married, and her way of presenting her devotion to the Lord is different. The other is unmarried, and her way of presenting
the Lord,
her bhakti is different. Right? But beyond that, the very, very question is that the Lord depicted by Karaikkal Ammai and the location and her own, the pay, as you said, the Gaulish look and feel, to the contrast of the other Lord, Vishnu, is beautifully adorned. So this one is, both are totally different at one level, yet both are very same in a different level. Both are the process to achieve salvation. How do you see these two juxtapositions? In which, we know that Karikkal Ammai is the earlier one historically in terms of timeline. So can you say something about this? I will pull out few questions.
Yes, sir. Yes, I wanted to, in fact, elaborate on this towards the end, but when I looked at the clock, I realized that I was crossing time. The purpose of choosing these two women saint poets itself is to bring out these two very contrasting approaches to Indian bhakti. This is one of the unique aspects of Indian bhakti and devotion. Probably nowhere else in the world can we see it. Okay, because philosophy emerging from a state of nothingness. Because nothingness is a very significant thing. In Shakespeare's Lear, he says, nothing begets nothing, he said. But for us, nothingness is very great for us. Because what is the landscape that she's projecting? It is a landscape of death. It is a landscape of darkness. It is a landscape of dreariness. It is a landscape of desolation. Who are there? There are other ghouls there. There are other pisasas there. The fox are there. And under such people, how would it be easy for anybody to see devotion there? Well, that is the aspect of India. The bhakti which we see in Hinduism is unique for it. Okay, bhakti is not concerned with the external forms alone. Seemingly external forms, I would say that. There is beauty in death. There is philosophy in death. And if you go into Arpuda Tiruvandadi, she brings out so many myths of Shiva. She continues to describe how do people consider you beautiful? She asks him, what do you wear? You wear an elephant skin and you wear a snake on your head and you run around like a madman with a Ganga pouring out her water there. Hey, what is the beauty there that you have? It's not that she does not know the beauty, but she understands the deepest philosophy. Karaikkal Ammai's mind, the devotion is a very searing devotion, sir. It is a penetrating devotion, a very searing devotion, which can look much deep beneath the exterior forms. For Indian philosophy, everything is beautiful. There is nothing which is ugly. This wonderful line from Bharati, Jalattilumli, Malattilumli. I mean, even now, very often that line keeps coming back to my mind again and again. To see God in Jalam, okay, understandable. But to see God in Malam is not an easy thing. And Bharati died very young. I would always wonder, how could he see that in such mundane, so-called seemingly mundane things? The greatest philosophy which has emerged from the land of Shunya, from the state of nothingness, seeming nothingness, that is what Karaikkal Ammai encapsulates about. Devotion need not be always from a land where everything is beautiful externally also. But the beauty is that if, on the contrast, if you see Andal, it is so romantic. It is a Brindavana which she brings into the place where she is born in Srivilliputturu. It is actually a Brindavana which is recreated. Everything is beautiful, the rain is abundant, everything around is green, everything is pleasant, and she sees God everywhere. And she seeks for an ultimate bridal union with the Lord. So, both are two beautiful ways of attaining the divine. That is the beauty of the Indian philosophy. How you can see beauty in everything. We were not conditioned to see beauty only in the so-called beautiful. We are taught to see beauty everywhere. That is the uniqueness of Indian mind, and that is the contrast which these two women bring. And it is not just a contrast, it is seemingly divergent, but they converge. And where the point at which they converge is bhakti and saranagati. That is it.
Thank you. When we are talking of beauty, that's a question that Somrita Majumdar is asking. Why did the shedding of feminine beauty and taking gaulish emaciated body essential for Karikkal Ammai to attain liberation? So it's really essential. That's her basic question. She has a couple of other questions. Could she not have avoided that? That's what I can sort of see from the tone of the question. So what would you say to that?
Well, with Karikkal Ammai, she gives it up because she thinks if it is a body which is not, it is not that she hates a body or a body hater or anything of that sort. I read the poem again and again. Just because it is not useful for the husband, she thinks that I do not need it. And the body can act as a shackle also at times. India has very many different conceptions of the body. The body can be a chariot, the body can be a prison house, the body can be a kshetra, then the body can be a sheath. And she thinks that she feels more liberated without the body. And that is one easier path of attaining moksha. Well, you must compare her with somebody like Akkamahadevi through her vachanas, because when you speak about Karaikkal Ammai as a Shaivite poet, we'll also have to look at Akkamahadevi, and also another woman Shaivite poet who praises Shiva in a very, very different tone. Karikkal Ammai is, there is a rhetoric of dynamism which you see there in Karikkal Ammai. The dynamism which you see in Karikkal Ammai is unsurpassed. And I think that the dynamism emerges because she has shed her body. Okay, so when the beautiful Akkamahadevi walks on the road, she understands that so many men are courting her. Of course, she tells them, what you see is just a lump of flesh. Okay, my soul inside is not for all this, she says. Nothing wrong about having emaciated the body. She sees that as a form, as a sort of liberation. And I think that she has the right to that liberty. She must choose whether she wants the body or not. I don't think that we should stand in terms of judgment over it. Let her. I think that is the ultimate freedom. You choose whether you want something or not. The woman choosing to have it or not, to have it or not to have it, that is the ultimate liberty.
Somrita has another question. Did the philosophy of Purusha and Prakriti play any role in conceptualizing the idea of transcendentalism and liberation in Bhakti devotional poetry?
The Purusha and Prakriti is an innate aspect of devotional poetics. When the Lord as the Purusha and everything else, the Jivatma, Paramatma equations, they definitely work. And everything, all Bhakti is transcendental only, because the signified is something which is unattainable. It is a philosophical concept. They definitely do play a major role in it. And they add to the beauty, and they add to the dynamics and the charm of Bhakti, I would say.
I have another question. Now, you see, you mentioned when you were talking about both Karikkal Ammai and Andal, there have also been in the Tamil, in the Vaishnava tradition, you have both Tirumangayalvar and Nammalvar also taking a Nayika Bhava.
Yes.
How would you distinguish between their presentation of a Nayika Bhava with that of Andal, for example?
Sir,
if at all we can compare. I mean, it is a very academic question. It is
no, sir. In fact, I wanted to speak about the Nayaki Bhava, but the time constraint, prevented me from speaking. I'm happy that you brought this into a discussion. The Nayaki Bhava is a very, very important aspect of Bhakti, because it was one of the Alvars, he says, for the soul to be liberated, you have to become feminine, he says. Nammalvar, okay, Nammalvar says that. And Nayaki Bhava is something which elevates one. It takes one towards the path of total surrender. And but women saint poets are at an advantage, because the male saint poets have to consider themselves as women. But women are born women. Okay, so they have a specific advantage over the male poets, I would say, in terms of using the Nayaki Bhava. They have to convert themselves into women, and but women are born women, so they do not have anything to shed. Okay, they do not have anything to shed, and it places them in an advantageous position.
Again, I think Somrita has just asked another question. From the, I have a follow-on question with that. Let me ask her question first. From the feminist perspective, Karikkal Ammai is the most radical Bhakti saint to me. Do you think the same? That's her question. But I want to add this, all these talks of feminism, patriarchy, again, that's one other word that came. Are they very highly westernized, concepts, framework? should we even be using these words in describing what is happening here in the Indian let's say religious and specifically the bhakti system, right?
Sir,
How do you even what is this framework in which you would even start describing?
okay, sir, this concept of feminism, what you are speaking about is the academic feminism, the 20th century academic feminism that you are speaking about. If we were to remove the label feminism, if we were to just view these women poets as they existed, whether it is Meera or whether it is Andal or whether most importantly Karaikkal Ammai, because one of the most, as she says, is a radical feminism she speaks in terms of. I think that there cannot be, if we want to use feminism, there cannot be greater feminists than our women saint poets. The other day when I was discussing something in an interview, okay, then the question which came up was women's use of language and women's use of body. Okay, and I was asking I asked them, what is the text which speaks about women's language? Immediately the answer came, Laugh of Medusa. So I asked them, don't you have this Indian consciousness in mind for us? Can there be women can there be greater women who have used the body as a language than the Bhakti women? Okay, the Bhakti women. So I think that they are, you need not use the term feminism at all for them. But even if you are going to view them from the lens of feminism, they are the finest examples of feminism. They had to work hard and they had a specific vision in mind. They gave up many things to attain that vision. So even if you want to call Karaikkal Ammai as a radical feminist, go ahead and calling her. But she is a radical women devotee and a saint and a poet. And you can give it any label you want, but does not matter. She transcends labels, I would say that. These women poets, they transcend labels. And even the term feminism is constricting, okay, is constricting on the spiritual attainments and achievements which these women have made. So you can both apply it for a limited understanding, but if you are going to stick to the term feminism, we will lose a larger understanding of their spiritual attainments and the accolades that these women have won.
I just want to add a couple of points here, if I may. One is that when we present Meera, there was a certain opposition to what she wanted. There was her marriage happened against her will. She was not allowed to pursue her bhakti in a sense. So she had to sort of break that and come out. But if you look at both Karikkal Ammai and Andal, the situation is very different, right? In case of Karikkal Ammai, she takes a decision that she is going to that incident with Mango allows her basically to come out of her marital relationship. After that, she has been, she was never, she has been celebrated. She has been so celebrated as a saint everywhere in temples. And we are not talking about today. The earliest Nataraja icons that we can see, you would see Karikkal Ammai dancing depicted.
Yeah.
Clearly, right?
Yeah.
Right through Tamil Nadu temples, Cholas celebrated her like nobody.
Cholas and Pallavas, sir, both of them celebrate.
I have not seen Pallava depictions with her as much, but I have seen certainly the Tanjavur Kovil to wherever you see that's always there, right? And her position unquestionably in the Saiva Nayanmar hierarchy is at the very, very top. There is no doubt about it. Even though in terms of voluminous poems, you have that the four key saints come there. Karikkal Ammai has her position. Right. Now you come to Andal. Andal is elevated as consort of God.
Yes.
She has her sannidhi in every temple. I mean, be it Srirangam, be it Tirumala, And just about everywhere, anywhere your modern Vishnu temple is envisaged, there is Vishnu, then there is a separate sanctum for the Tayar, and there is a separate sanctum for Andal, right? So the position that is given to them is highly elevated, without any doubt. So that the standardized feminist framework is what I'm basically saying is different. They were never resisted. They were never pushed down. When Periyalvar is only shocked about the very act of her giving a worn garland to the god. His problem is not that she is doing. She has a great devotion, but the manner. But then the whole drastic presentation is that the god comes and says that is exactly what I want.
What I want.
See, that itself is a very breaking of any traditional modes that you would talk about, right? So in a sense, what is a bigger revolution in the worship mode than the Bhakti tradition itself? You can take
undoubtedly, sir. That's why I said, if you use the term feminism, you are constricting them.
Exactly.
Within a limited space.
Right.
Let them occupy vaster spaces. Let us not even label them.
Right. No,
I don't want them to come under any label.
Yeah.
Let us not label them. Any labeling is constructing them, constricting them. Okay. I do not want constricting spaces for these women. But I mean, in terms of freedom, if you want to use any label, let critics use it.
It is instructive to use these words because they have a certain, in academic parlance, they have specific meaning.
Undoubtedly.
But when we are using it, how do we present it in a proper context right through? Okay? But fascinating. These two are unquestionably, the power of poetry, which unfortunately, because the whole talk was in English, the language couldn't be brought out. But
undoubtedly, sir. Any translation is a translation.
Intense in terms of the
undoubtedly,
language.
Sir. Undoubtedly. For both Andal and for Karaikkal Ammai, sir, it's not one. I have at least 5 to 6 translations of each. Okay, and anywhere I would, every translation tries to do something better than that, but somewhere things are miss.
Right.
That is the problem of translation. But translations need to exist because how does it reach a global audience?
No, absolutely.
No, undoubtedly. Even if we know the Bible as a text, if I should read it, it's because a translation is available and not in the original Hebrew. But translation has its own epistemic gaps and linguistic gaps, but still they are needed.
Oh, absolutely. And
some translations we see them as beautiful. For example, not just Andal. Shakuntala is one play which I go again and again to read. I have at least 6 translations of it with me. And some translations are really good, but I do not know. I don't read and write Sanskrit. I read it only in translations. I think that somewhere for some particular word, some critic does it better. Okay. So as you said, sir, I accept that the power and the zest of the original cannot be brought out in a translation. That's why 1 or 2 I recited in Tamil and the rest I had to bring it in English because I have to have the audience in mind also. True. In fact, I wanted to sing the Bali Tirunamam of Andal and the final benedictions also I wanted to say that in Tamil. And then I thought, okay, let me tell it in English. Sure. I will conclude with that. I mean, after all the questions, I'll conclude.
Yeah. I have one last question. You come from a Telugu family. You are living in Andhra. Though you have spent time. I mean, you are from Tamil Nadu, but you are. How is Andal viewed in? Starting from, of course, Amukta Malyada you have already mentioned, but how is she viewed in the Telugu, religious Vaishnava circles, basically?
Wonderful, sir. She occupies a pride of place there also. In Telugu literary circles, religious sections also, she occupies a pride of place. And I have heard the Tirupavai being sung in Telugu, recited in Telugu. I have heard it. But somehow, for me, nothing like the Tamil original is what I would think. And very many, I think nearly 20 years ago, I heard it. It was given to me as a gift by somebody who knows, who's very good both in Tamil and Telugu. Venerated, sir, venerated Andal, the praise. But I think that the highest, the intensity with which she's worshipped in Tamil Nadu is different. Okay, the intensity with which the Margadi or the Dhanurmasam is conducted there is different. In Tirupati, you will have it because of the percolation. It's a border state, but deep inside, the Vaishnava temples do conduct it, and they do sing the Tirupavai in Telugu, sir. I heard them singing it in the Telugu translation, and occasionally they do try to use certain Tamil words, which is accented in with a heavy Telugu accent. That's what they do.
So what kind of Telugu translations exist of Andal's works, both in the verse form as well as in translations and in commentaries?
Sir, I do not know the exact name. So let me tell you, sir, I read and write Tamil, although Telugu is my mother tongue. Okay. So although I speak Telugu, I don't read and write Telugu. I'm sorry to say this. So I've seen quite a few translations available, sir, but I do not know who the authors are. Let me accept my limitations.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Sharda, for a fascinating talk. You have brought out two of the most amazing, unbelievably powerful wielders of Tamil poetry and pioneers in the Bhakti movement of Tamil Nadu. Beautifully in a single talk you have brought out, and you were very gracious in answering all the questions. It was a fantastic evening. We at Tamil Heritage Trust, we are really happy to have hosted you. Thank you once again. For the viewers, the next month event is it's not a single day event. From November 30th to December 6th, we have a whole host of events which I just shared with you. We would like you to be there for all of them. They are just free for all. Will be delivered through YouTube. Will be streamed through YouTube. So we welcome you to join us. Thank you once again, Ravi. Do you want to say anything?
Nothing.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sharada. I think the conversation was quite fascinating. In fact, I think probably we should have had a panel of panels which would have post questions at you, and probably that would have been much more interesting than a straightforward talk. It was very interesting.
Thank you.
Sir, I would like to close with a small benediction, sir.
Sure, please. Please go ahead.
One benediction from Karaikkal Ammai and one benediction from Andal.
Sure.
I mean, for a corona-free world, which we could apply it today. In Arpuda Tiruvandadi, verse 5, she says, "Only God creates all beings. Only God destroys this world. And if great misery befalls us, only God removes it. When we cry out to our Father." So let us cry out and ask our Father to remove it. Then in Nachiyar Tirumodi, she says, "Those who live considering the works of Kodai of Vishnu Chittan as a balm for the pains of this world will never be separated from the splendid feet of the Lord, who graced the great elephant, that supreme Lord who is glimpsed on this earth in Vrindavana." So let us move for a disease-free world. Let the world witness peace, joy, and let us get back to a life of joy and peace and a disease-free world.
Thank you.
Let Bhakti be the panacea for all our problems, which is plaguing this universe.
Thank you once again. With that, we close our talk today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.